This is Christian Book Blurb, brought to you by author and songwriter Matt McChlery. Get a behind-the-scenes glimpse into the lives of some of your favourite Christian authors, hear about their books and faith. Also, why not check out my website, mattmcclery.com. Well, hello and welcome to another wonderful episode of the Christian Book Blurb podcast. I'm your host, Matt McChlery. Now, before we get started, if you are a regular listener to the podcast, you might hear that my voice is slightly different this week. That's because I'm struggling a little bit with a throat infection whilst doing this recording. So if I'm sounding a little bit different, well, please forgive me. Be assured, it is still me, all right? I'm still me, and I'm still behind the microphone here. I'm really pleased to be introducing another fantastic Christian author to you. We're going to be talking about the topic, why less means more. And Cathy Madavan is my guest. So welcome, Cathy.
Welcome to you too, to your own podcast. It is so
Thank
nice
you.
to be here, even if
It's
apparently
great.
you don't sound like you. But it's great to be with you.
I don't often get welcome to my own podcast. That's fantastic. Thanks, Cathy.
Well, we're glad you're here. It wouldn't happen otherwise.
So we've got you on because you've written a book around this topic of why less means more. I guess, well, we live in a culture in the West. I mean, I don't know where you're listening to this from, this podcast at the moment. You could be anywhere in the world, but I'm living in the UK, and you are as well. And we're constantly told, aren't we, to always do more, to be better, to and I know I had to fight this in my life as well. Where busyness, the busier you are, the more successful or more important you are or seem or feel or whatever. It's like a badge of honor. I'm so busy. Why? Why do you think this is?
I mean, that's a really good question, isn't it? But I think we can all resonate. I think, I was observing it. It's almost like the answer to every question was more. Like we need more success, we need more followers, we need more likes, we need more money, we need more holidays, we need more muscles, we need more whatever it is, we need more of it. And I think it is true that in a consumerist Western like culture, that is a particular issue, and I'm sure that social media and comparison hasn't helped that. But I don't think it's new. I don't think it's a new issue. I was reading recently again that parable in Luke 12 where Jesus, just talks about this guy who was accumulating stuff, more and more stuff. So he had to build a bigger barn, and then he accumulated more stuff and he had a bigger barn. And eventually, he passes away, and God just challenges him and said, why did you spend your life storing up stuff for yourself instead of being rich towards God? And I think so that tendency that we have to comfort and soothe and kind of soothe our egos and make ourselves safe, to try and push back our fears, whatever it is that we do, it often just trying to accumulate more in some way. And like you said, that could be more business, could be more money, whatever it is. I think really a lot of it is out of fear, actually.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned something just now, being rich towards God. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with a Christian, working or hoping to be successful or having that as an aim in life. Well, would you agree with that or not?
I would totally agree with that. In fact, I think we are designed to work and to be fruitful and to be fulfilled. I think that is absolutely right. Like we're supposed to live lives of purpose, aren't we, and meaning, and that's all really, really important. I think the trouble is that things can go off kilter, can't we? And particularly, we saw with, first of all, the technological revolution, and now we've got a digital revolution where all this extra efficiency hasn't actually brought us extra contentment and happiness. It's just meant that we're placing more pressure on ourselves all the time. And there was a piece of massive bit of research done recently by one of the big management consultancies. And the people that they surveyed, about 77% of them cited that they'd had some kind of burnout at work. 25% of them didn't take their holidays. Most of them said it affected their personal relationships. Well, so now we're not just talking about being fruitful and being fulfilled and being productive. Now we're talking about the fact that we've all got limits, which is something I talk a bit about in the book, but that we've got so used to breaching those limits and to living beyond those limits and almost being in denial of the fact that we've got these limits, that physical limits, emotional limits, spiritual limits. It's almost like we pretend that we haven't got them, like we're superheroes, but we're not. We none of us can just keep breaching those thresholds.
Yeah. Um, One thing I really liked about your book, and we might circle back to it a bit later, is that it doesn't say chuck out all the stuff, smash your TV and throw it in the nearest skip, and you know, don't have a quit your job and go and live in the hills somewhere. It doesn't say that. It doesn't sort of push things to the extreme, but you do advocate for trying to find a balance and trying to prioritize, yeah, just prioritize the important things in life, and question what is actually important for you.
You know what? I think you've just hit the nail on the absolute head there with the word prioritize. So I would say it's not just a book about decluttering, although simplification, I think, is something that we need to think about. But I think it is really, for me, this has been about a process of recalibration, of really like trying to work out like what are the most important things in life and how do we prioritize those? How do we make space for those things and make sure that we're not just creating space for all the things that don't really matter and not making space for the things that do really matter. So yeah, there might be a little bit of reduction involved. If we do need to make some changes, and some of us actually for our health probably do, but it is more about that process of recalibration. So every chapter's got less of something, more of something, and I suppose it's just asking the question, what do we need less of and what do we need more of? It might not always be that we need less of something. We might need less isolation and more connection. Do you know what I mean? it
Mm,
might so it might not actually be like about doing less stuff. Sometimes it might be about doing more of the right things.
but the
So
right
yeah,
stuff, yeah,
it's a
yeah.
you prioritizing is the right word.
So your new book then, Why Less Means More, Making Space for What Matters Most, addresses the busyness addiction we have. Why did you write it? Who did you write it for?
Well, I suppose firstly, I probably wrote it for myself because
Mm.
I am one of those people who I'm not Mrs. Zen. Do you know what I mean? I'm a woman who is, I am armed with to-do lists and I'm married to a man who is armed with spreadsheets. And, we, I know how prone I am to defaulting back to filling every gap and putting another thing in a diary as if somehow I can duplicate my hours. And I think, I really realized that this was not just an issue for me, but everybody I was speaking to was struggling to find space for the things that really mattered to them. And then Mark and I, after leaving our last church, we were leading a church and we left and we ended up with a bit of a hiatus, an unexpected gap before we moved on, where we were living in a friend's spare room for nearly a year and we had a lot of less. Our stuff was in storage, like our life was a bit upside down. And it really challenged me to think about, well, okay, so if I'm going to start putting stuff back in my life, now we've got this reboot situation in our life. What are the things that I just don't want to default back to, and what are the things I want to do? And it turns out already from the feedback I've had, I think so many people feel that need to slightly refresh and reboot. I think that's why people are actually looking more again at things like the spiritual disciplines and Sabbath and just slowing down, the whole slow food
Mm.
movement, all of these things. I think there is a sense in which the pace that we're living at, I think many people feel, is just not sustainable. So this was my attempt to really exploring that, not just for myself, but hopefully for all of those who are feeling like they're in the same boat.
So you've already mentioned the some ideas behind slowing down, and trying to find spaces of rest, in your life. But what else could we do? What insights can you give us, as to some antidote, for all of this complexity that we find ourselves in? What other things do you suggest?
Well, that really is the issue, is the complexity of life. So, one of the chapters actually says that the antidote to complexity is not just simplicity, because I think that's where we go. We think we've just got to, like you said, like, resign, move on to the allotment, fire our children, somehow we can create a blank, and we can't, can we? We
No.
just can't. So I think that the antidote to complexity is actually clarity. It's actually about isolating, like, I have this many hours in my day, I have this much energy in my energy tank. So actually, like, I need some clarity around how I spend my time, my money, my energy, and how actually I create perhaps some rhythms in my life and some natural points of margin and natural points of rest and breathing, maybe, not putting back to back Zoom calls, having, just, even if it's 5 to 10 minute breaks between them, trying to really protect those days off, maybe writing a list of thankfulness rather than just whinging and putting on Netflix to anesthetize ourselves. Just some things that maybe we can just create some mental space, some physical space, and some spiritual space, going back to those rhythms of just putting prayer back in. Even if it's, I sometimes just pray when I put the kettle on, just stand still for a minute while the kettle is boiling, look at the garden and pray, rather than just, tidying for a couple of minutes or scrolling for a couple of minutes, just trying to punctuate the day a little bit. So rather than the frenetic, frenzied, constant connection, that there is, a kind of ability to be able to breathe a little bit, in the
Mm,
midst of, what is often a complicated and challenging life, especially in some seasons. Some seasons just are really testing.
mm, yes, they can be. Thank you for that. For me, something that I found with this whole idea of working and prioritizing, and the things that I strive for or try to achieve in my life, that kind of thing. And something that God's been speaking to me about for several years now is trying to redefine my concept of what success is. What does success look like? Because the world tells us that success looks like this: more money, big house, more cars, more. Whereas in the Bible, it doesn't give us that picture. God doesn't say you're successful because, you've got a big car or a big house. There are other things that define success. So in your opinion, how does the Bible or how does God define success for us?
That is such an important question, isn't it? Because I think I do feel like sometimes it feels like we've been inadvertently signed up to a competition that we never knew that we were in. And you're so right. Like, so how much are you earning, or how big is your car, or, how many A
How much are you
stars?
doing? I mean, even in church circles, it's
Yeah.
like, how many roaches are you on? How much are you doing? How many prayer meetings did you go to last month? And it's all about, doing
All these
stuff.
metrics that we've kind of created for our lives, and some of those can be helpful, I mean, but they are not supposed to be the benchmarks. They might be things that are out, that we use to outwork things in our lives. So we might go to a prayer meeting, or we might study hard, or we might get a nice house, but those things shouldn't be the benchmarks for our life. They should be the overflow, really, of the things that are going on in our life. And the more I think about it and I look at it, I just keep coming back to those, the big commandment, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love others as yourself. Or those famous verses in Micah 6:8 that says, act justly, love mercy, walk humbly with your God. Now, none of these things mean that you can't have a car, or that you can't do well in your exams, but like, by which criteria are you living a significant life? And that's the difference in the words for me. So I that chapter for me is less success and more significance, because I think
Mm,
significance is about the impact you make on the world. So it's not just about how much money you leave in your will, it's about the legacy that you leave in your relationships, what
mm,
people will say about you when when you're dead and gone, like just the impact that you've made on you. So you're not serving in the youth group because it's a tick in the box to prove. You're serving in the youth group because you are passionate about making an impact on the next generation, and you are so excited to see them thrive and to see them
mm,
empowered and to see them have a peer group when the rest of the world is doing their head in. So those things aren't the benchmarks, but the impact. It's about significance, really. So yeah, I think for me that is helpful to constantly be self-aware about the fact that we are being given those metrics all the time by advertisers who are paid a lot of money to get into your head to tell you that you're not good enough and that your life isn't good enough. And we
mm,
have to kind of be really aware of that and set our benchmarks and metrics to the stuff that the Bible talks about.
mm. The part of the Bible that I go to when I think about this question or dilemma or whatever it so happens to be in people's lives at the time, um, is that whole thing about when we welcomed into the kingdom in eternity, and he says, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." He doesn't say, "Well done, my good and successful servant," or "Well done, my good and rich servant," or "Well done, my good and extremely busy servant." He says, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." And for me, that's what I've held on to is the whole idea of being faithful with what God's given me and what God's asking me to do. And you know what? It might fail. I might fail,
Yes.
but I'm being faithful with that, and that's the thing that God looks at, I believe, rather than success or more or whatever. It's the faithfulness and the obedience. That's the key.
I love that. That is just a brilliant way of answering the question, far better than I did. That's really good. In fact, I am.
You
I
wrote the
no,
book.
yeah, I know, right? You should write one. I remember reading a book or a phrase by Eugene Peterson, that great
Mm,
theologian and writer who wrote the Message Bible. He talks about a long obedience in the same direction.
yeah.
And that sense of faithful obedience, why is that not more valued? Like you said,
Hmm.
it is not about how many platforms you stand on. It's not about how many people read your book. It's not about how amazing your podcast is, although it is. It really is about what, like you said, whether you're faithful with what God's given you, the gifts that He's given you, the relationships He's given you, the resources He's given you. I love that, and I think you're absolutely right.
One of the chapters in your book that really resonated with me, and it's something that my wife's been talking about for ages now, and I was like, yeah, this is exactly it. Is a chapter called "Less Extraordinary, More Ordinary." Now, this is so countercultural because everywhere, everyone is wanting to be extraordinary. You've got, pushy parents wanting their child to be the best one in the classroom. And you got TV shows where only one person is going to be the winner, and everybody else's dreams are in the gutters, and they're all crying their eyes out because their dreams have been destroyed because they didn't win the competition. And those are just some small examples around us. But it's so impossible to be the one that scrambles their way to the top. Yeah, tell us about the concept behind less extraordinary, more ordinary.
You're absolutely bang on, and I think it's so funny. It's like being good enough is not good enough anymore, is it? Like you can't be good enough anymore. You can't be average, although statistically speaking, that is kind of what we all probably are. But that's somehow you've got to break through the statistics and
There's
be.
nothing wrong with average.
Exactly. It's performance pressure. And I talk about
Yeah.
in the book how, like, even on, with kids now with World Book Day or theme days, it's like,
Oh my word, World Book Day is a nightmare for
I,
parents. I can
I
tell you
know.
what. Oh my word.
But people are like mortgaging their houses to buy outfits. It's like,
Yeah,
what is going
it's
on here?
crazy.
And in back in the day, because I'm so ancient, you used to propose to someone by getting down on one knee, and then that would be it. Now it's like you'd have to hang glide off a cliff with an orchestra at the bottom. Obviously, there's a film crew
Well, yeah.
filming the whole
So for
thing.
social media, of
Yeah,
course.
absolutely. It's every, you know, and it's kind of like, wow. And I know that social media is a huge part of that, because obviously no one knew when back in the day what we did, and you know, it wasn't, you weren't sharing your child in their outfit for the whole world to show how marvelous. Birthday cakes, kids' birthday cakes. Oh my gosh, the insecurity I felt as a mum looking at everyone else's birthday cakes when my kids had a chocolate caterpillar cake every year, and I am not scared to say it. So it's, yes, for me, I think it's kind of, I've had to really assess what that was doing to my well-being, this constant performance pressure. And I am quite an ambitious person, and I am quite a perfectionist, actually, and I think that's probably one of the issues for me, is I am someone who strives to do things really well, but then tied to all of that cultural performance pressure, I realized that was quite damaging. And for me, the antidote to that was really beginning to cherish the ordinary, to notice the little moments, you know, when a child puts their hand in your hand or draws a picture with you, or when you're, you know, walking down the street and someone's busking and it's just beautiful, and stopping and listening to it for
That's
a
so
moment,
good.
or, you know, you're in the garden and the rose has just come out and it's, you know, it's beautiful, or, you know, you're tasting something, you're using your senses. It's all about your senses, isn't it? You're tasting something and it's just beautiful, and it's a meringue that just collapses in your mouth, you know, and just savoring those moments and noticing the simple pleasures, and realizing that not everything has to be extra, extra, extra. In fact, it might be that if we could learn to cherish those ordinary things, that we could perhaps be a lot more content.
That's really good. That's really good. We'll be back talking more with the author Cathy Madavan about her book, Why Less Means More, just after these messages.
If you enjoy listening to this podcast, you can help keep it on the web. All you've got to do is buy me a coffee. Head over to buymeacoffee.com/Matt McChlery to make a donation. There is a link in this episode's show notes. So go on, buy me a coffee today and help this podcast to keep supporting Christian books and authors.
Hello, welcome back. I am talking with author Cathy Madavan about her latest book, Why Less Means More, Making Space for What Matters Most. One of the things I really appreciate, Cathy, in your book is that you freely admit that you yourself are not perfect, but you're also on this journey of discovering these things that you're speaking about for yourself. Can you tell me a little bit about sort of some of the background to that, and also where you are currently on your journey of life, really?
Well, as I said, you know, I know that I'm a bit of a busy bunny by nature, and I know that often my friends will say, "Oh, you're always so busy." So I know that I am that person, and I think being in church leadership, being a parent, just being involved in lots of ministry in different places, you know, I'm often really, really, you know, aware of the busyness in my life. So I've had to really think about that as we've gone back into church leadership. We've moved house. Just thinking about, okay, so how do I look after ourselves? Because here's the thing: no one else is going to prioritize your life for you. No one else is going to look after you. No one else is going to decide that you need to take your day off. No one else is going to make these calls for you. In fact, if you leave your priorities to everyone else and the emails keep, you know, mounting up, then, you know, life's just going to get even more chaotic. So I think I'm in a little bit of a process at the moment of trying to remove some of the small things. So I've really worked out that a lot of the small jobs that I get asked to do were stopping me doing the really big things I would like to do, because my diary was ending. It was so cluttered with an article here, or a little bit of this there, and some more admin there, or what. Just trying to, rather than doing lots of little jobs at inconvenient times, is either to group them or to eliminate them, so I can make space for maybe some of the bigger things that I keep saying I must get around to that, but I never seem to have time for it. So I am actually letting a few things go that I'm going to be, some radio bits, some writing bits that I'm going to be really sad to say goodbye to, but actually will create some space. I'm also really being protective about some of our days off, and I'm also really being intentional about putting things that fill the tank. So the tank is always draining, the tap is always on, we're always giving out, we're always doing. So it's like, how do I replenish my spiritual, emotional tank? So things like live music or going to a show or going for a walk in the countryside. And we're just trying to work a bit harder at doing some of the things that replenish. So, and everyone's different, aren't they? What replenishes you will be different to me. So I think that's some of the things I'm trying to put into place as we move back into gear 5 and 6.
Yeah, really good. Thank you. Just as Cathy was mentioning about what she does to replenish herself and to sort of fill her tank back up again, why don't you pop over to our Facebook group, the Fans of Christian Book Blurb podcast? Let's get a discussion going on there about what fills up your tank, what replenishes your life, and we can share some really good ideas on there to help everyone in the community out. So why don't you pop over to our Facebook group, Fans of Christian Book Blurb, and get involved. Cathy, one of the things we like to do on our show is to not only discuss discipleship themes and, things that the book focuses on, but also to find out more about the author themselves. You've given us a few little bits about your life, about, being in ministry and doing a few other bits and pieces. I just want to dig down into your life for a bit, if that's okay. What
Is
do
this
you
the
do
therapy bit? Is this
Yeah,
the
well,
counselling?
what do you do for fun? Do you have time for fun?
I definitely do. I'm a really big fan of live music. So anytime I can be out listening to a jazz band or an orchestra or a musical show or like I said, even a busker on the street, anytime I can be listening to live music, that for me is like, I just can't take the smile off my face. I just love it. It really, really does. And being out in nature, I think for me, just going for walks, we've just moved to the Bristol area, just discovering some of the lovely walks around here and some of the National Trust properties and things like that. That's for me. And obviously reading books, I have to say that, but it's the truth.
Yeah.
Nothing better than reading a good book.
Just talking about live music, I just recently took my two eldest children, my two girls, to Big Church Festival. Have you been to Big Church Festival? It used to be called Big Church Day Out. Have you ever been before?
Almost every year. Absolutely love it.
And do you do the camping thing, or do you sort of stay in an actual physical building and then sort of come in for the days?
Well, actually, my husband is registered blind, so he can't really see enough to camp. So camping is not the world's most accessible form of accommodation if you need to toilet in the middle of the night or whatever it is. So we tend to stay in a little kind of, travel lodge or something in near distance and then go in each day. But yeah, we absolutely love that. And we love all the other festivals. I'm really involved with Spring Harvest Festival. I'm on the leadership team there. I'm at New Wine this year as well. So I think that our festivals and, live music like that are fantastic, whether it's the worship spaces or whether it's just contemporary Christian music. It's all giving glory to God using those incredible musical skills. And it's fantastic, isn't it? It's really great fun.
Yeah, I love it. I love just that sense, because I go to quite a small church, and just joining with other Christians on a bigger scale helps you know that you're not so alone in the world as well sometimes.
Yes,
Anyway,
definitely.
that's
And
just me.
such diversity
There
in the
is. It's
church.
fantastic.
And
Really
you just
good.
don't always realize, do you? There's so many different ages and stages and
Yeah.
styles, and it's actually it really
So,
lifts your eyes.
who's your favorite band, or what's your favorite song at the moment then?
Oh, favorite song at the moment. I really love the singer Lauren Daigle. She's brilliant. I think some of the stuff that's coming out of Maverick City, some of that kind of slightly more, not just kind of standard middle-age white rock. Do you know what I mean? It's just a little bit more diverse, bit more interesting. Kingdom Choir stuff is great. So I have to say I listen to a lot of different styles of music. So I'm quite keen on quite a lot. But I mean Spotify or whatever version of that you use is great, isn't it? Because it keeps giving you different.
Suggestions and
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Oh, that's great. Have you got anything you're working on or coming up soon? I know you talked about sort of eliminating some stuff to make space to do the bigger stuff. So, can you give us a little sneaky peek into some of the bigger stuff that you might have up your sleeve in the coming months, perhaps?
Well, actually, so right now I'm working really hard on the spring harvest theme for next year. So every year, spring harvest has a theme. And for the first time, my husband and I are writing the theme material. So the whole of the week's theme will be based on a book that we're writing, and it's on the book of Ephesians. It's called Up and Alive. So I've got to have 40,000 words handed in fairly soon now, which is a bit scary, but we're really excited about it. It's such a fantastic New Testament book, filled with great stuff. So there's loads in there. And then the other things at the moment, I'm really involved in an amazing charity called the Kyria Network, which is about women in leadership, supports women in whatever sphere of leadership they're involved. And we run conferences and events across the UK just to really encourage women in their calling as not just leaders, but people who are making a difference, people who are just really invested in different areas, whether it's the arts, church, business, whatever it is. So we've got conferences coming up that we're working quite hard on. So is that, and I'm doing some more tours for Care for the Family, fantastic charity. I'm one of their speakers. So we've got a big mums tour in the autumn in Northern Ireland and some different tours being planned for next year already. So lots of great stuff.
Thanks for that. That sounds really exciting, and my family really loves Spring Harvest as well. It's so good that you're writing the theme book as well. That's really good. That's really cool.
Oh, thank you. That's encouraging.
Where can we find you on social media, websites, all that kind of stuff? How can people connect with you or find your books or all of that?
Well, the great thing is there is only one Cathy Madavan on the entire planet. It is not a common name. So genuinely, if you put Cathy Madavan into Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, you're just going to find me. So it's that easy. My website's cathymadavan.com. And just so you know, this latest book, Why Less Means More and Irrepressible, before it actually were written it's full of kingdom of God values, but it's been written in such a way that it's hopefully not like in your face Christian. So you can give it to your family members or your work
Yeah,
colleagues.
it is really accessible. It's full of Christian principles, as you say.
Yes.
But you can, I've read it. And if you're listening to this and you're thinking about it, you can very happily give it to someone who isn't a Christian and they will appreciate it.
And that was our plan, really, so that you can get it in Waterstones or you can get it on Amazon, you can get it in places. And I don't know about you, but because we know that you're passionate about books, I'm passionate about books. I think words change people's lives. And I was just so prayerful and mindful that some of the stuff that we know as Christians, as kingdom of God stuff, if you can put it into people's hands and minds, even if they don't even, that believe in God, it could be a blessing to them. It could help them. And so I really hope that this will get into spaces that a book that was more obviously religious wouldn't. But I think if you are a Christian reading it, there's loads in there that you'll recognize and it will hopefully speak to you too.
Yeah, that's really great. Thanks, Cathy. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Cathy is going to read us something that Mother Teresa had up on her wall as we come to the close of this podcast. But thank you so much to you, the listener, for listening. All of Cathy's information, we'll be having a link to her website in the show notes of this podcast as well, so you can connect with her, find out more about her books and all of that. And yeah, so do join us again. We have this podcast coming out with a new author talking about some amazing topics to encourage you in your faith and relationship with Jesus every 2 weeks or so. So twice a month, this podcast comes out. So we'll be back again really soon with another episode. So don't wait too long before checking us out again. But here is Cathy. In her book, she says these words remind us that our goals should be as much about who we are as what we do. So over to you, Cathy.
Yeah, this is such a famous poem on the wall of Mother Teresa's home in Calcutta, and it's worth hearing again, I think. People are often unreasonable, irrational, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you're kind, people may accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you are successful, you will win some unfaithful friends and some genuine enemies. Succeed anyway. If you are honest and sincere, people may deceive you. Be honest and sincere anyway. What you spend years creating, others could destroy overnight. Create anyway. If you find serenity and happiness, some may be jealous. Be happy anyway. The good you do today will often be forgotten. Do good anyway. Give the best you have, and it will never be enough, but give your best anyway. In the final analysis, it is between you and God. It was never between you and them anyway.
Thank you, Cathy. That's fantastic. Thank you for joining us. It's been a real honor and privilege. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Have a good day.
Thank you for listening. See you soon. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to Christian Book Blurb with your host, Matt McChlery. Do give it a like, give it a share, and let your friends know all about it. We do hope to see you again soon on another Christian Book Blurb.